Hey everybody, it's Anne, and we are here live for another episode of Reaper Toolbox Live, where we will be once again painting The Dragon That Never Ends from Julie Guthrie's Dance of Death. So without further ado, oh, and light. We are definitely a little bit discombobulated today. Bear with us. Let's get to it. Dr. Bob, I better be worth the wait. Come on. Hi, Kuroniko. Hi, Dr. Bob. Hi, Max. Hi, Norwegian Gadget Man. Hi, RG Wolf. Hi, everybody. I think that, hi, Painting Dog. I think there's like 40 of you in chat, so I cannot possibly name you all and say hi. So I'm just going to give a general hi, everybody, there. Just like the Muppets, right? It's like, ah. I cannot do a Kermit the Frog voice, though, so just don't ask. All right. And it's in your painting hero. Excellent. All right, so today I am just in kind of one of those moods, and I'm like, you know what? I've been painting this dragon forever. I wonder if I could wet blend the entire rest of the dragon just in one session. Just in an hour and a half, I wonder if I could get my basic highlights and everything down. So I think we might try that today because I'm like, I'm really sick of painting you, dragon. I want to move on to the other dragon. So we're gonna go for that today. We're gonna see what we can do, and I'll show you guys kind of how I start with a wet blend and then I refine it to make it look a little sharper after I do that. With scales, it's actually really easy, and it's a way to use your gigantic brushes. Where's the Ed House brush? Oh well, I guess I'm the closest I have is a number 10 canvas brush, and I could actually. Yeah, I don't know, it might be a little bit too big. We'll find out, won't we? All right, you can do it. Thank you. I already named everyone that matters. Yeah, right. All right, so yeah, so Collins, if you give me minicam, today we have a Collins and a Justin riding wingman. I've got like two awesome people helping to run the show. I think I will use, you know what? I'm going to use my big fat number 2 Da Vinci round, I think. We'll try this, and if this is not fast enough, or I want more, better, faster coverage, then we will switch to the flats. Flats are okay for dragon scales, just because, you know, you can essentially cover so much of this area. I think flats are actually a little bit better for smooth areas, though, so that's why I'm not going to reach for the flat right now. We're just going to jump right in. I'm going to be continuing what I've been doing here, which is starting with the purple and white blend and then glazing the green over the top of it. We're going to start with his forepaw here, move down to his leg. I have to kind of check my positioning at this point because he's actually posed more like this, and I want to make sure that my highlights are reading correctly. So as you can see, this area on the forearm definitely needs a highlight, and this upper area of the arm needs a highlight. We'll do slight highlights on the other fingers, but we don't want to go too far because those are technically in shadow if the light is coming from above. So, oh yeah, I should talk about free. So because we went a little bit overboard with giving away like 9 dragons last week, we're scaling it a little back today. However, what we are going to do is give away brushes, and they're the nice Kolinsky Sable brushes from Reaper. They are in fact the 05 size, which is the brush that I used as my workhorse brush all while I was full-time staff painter for Reaper. So they're a good, if you've never used a Kolinsky before, or you don't usually use a natural hair brush, these are a good entry-level brush to get in with because they're only around $10 usually. We're going to give away 5 here on the show, so if you would like to try one out, then by all means do your hashtag free. And we'll just run with that. All right, I'm going to start with, got my dragon black, or my dragon black. Well, it is pure black, but it is also dragon black. I'm going to just put down a layer of black real quick on here because I've probably got some rub off. At some point, one of these weeks, I really have to switch to, holding this guy with bubble wrap, which is something I think I've talked about with you guys before. It's usually what I do with big heavy models if I'm working with them a lot over time and I know I'm going to be handling them. It's how I painted Soldier, my Soldier 76 from Overwatch, that statue that I entered at ReaperCon last year. Essentially large models, you know, there's really no good way to hold them, and they're always getting rub off. I mean, this guy on the tail, because I hold the tail all the time. And the way I get around that typically is to hold the model with soft bubble wrap, small bubble, not the big bubbles. And what this does is it gives it a soft cushion so it doesn't rub off the paint. You're holding it against the bubble wrap, so it softens the pressure of your hand, so it minimizes rub off. And also, if you've got a big, heavy model, it's just a nice way to keep a grip on it without, it getting too tiresome. It's a good cradle. Heavy models tend to get more rub off just because the pressure of holding them alone is enough to cause it. The paint is softer than the metal. So you can also just, sometimes with resin, but less often with resin. But just for these guys, it's like, I have to hold this paw, I'm already getting rub off on it, so I'm going to probably switch to bubble wrap next time. Yes, it is Dance of Death, Julie Guthrie's Dance of Death. This is the dragon on the bottom who is kind of attached to a rocky outcropping, and he's kind of like falling back and his wings are curving, and he's kind of trying to swoop up at the dragon that's coming down on top of him, which is why I'm holding him this way. When you're doing something dynamic like this, where you're painting a model, but you know that it pegs into a larger work and it might be at an odd angle, then it helps to make an attempt to hold that model the way, at least close to the way where it actually goes. Otherwise, you get into a problem where I almost got into with this one, where I kind of forget the angle that I'm actually at. Like the dragon actually is at this angle, but I was holding it more like this. And so it can kind of mess with you when you're trying to do highlights. You want it to look consistent and right, and you can get in trouble if you hold the dragon at the wrong angle. So let me now this is starting to dry a little bit. I'm going to add in a little bit more vibrant of a pink because I started with a lot of black, so it kind of tinted my, so we're getting that's a strong purple right there. And we're going to add some white to it because we're going to glaze it down with the green. Remember, once it starts to dry, we don't want to touch it anymore, so I kind of have to get all my big highlights in. And I don't want to go white everywhere. I want the light to look like right there we look like the light's really picking it up. So we'll do that, and we'll I might try to add some purple onto this arm because I was painting this a little bit different style when we originally started. So I didn't quite get all the colors the same, but I can get around that now that I've added in purple by just adding in a little bit of a purple highlight on these scales right here. And that will kind of bring in those scales a little bit. I could add a little bit, likewise, of pink, or sorry, it's purple. It's runic purple, 9424. Add a little bit of that on these scales as well to keep my green and purple thing going. I may need to do a re-highlight after I do that, since I kind of painted over the highlight there with my purple. So I probably want to add a little bit more white to that purple and do another spot highlight. Notice I am doing all of this with my number 2 brush, which is not normal, but with large models I'm starting to go there more often. With Kolinsky's, especially like this Da Vinci, I find the tip is actually good enough for me to hit little tiny areas on each scale when I want to, and then I don't have to switch brushes see how that knocked down some of that green, taking some of the purple in there. And it kind of makes the whole thing look a little bit more like we intended. And actually, you know what? I'm going to hit this whole shoulder here too, because I'm here and I can, and it would be kind of a round highlight because we'll just do our glazing. I don't want to make all my parts look totally different. I've been painting over a lot of what I do with this dragon as I change my mind, which is not usual for me, but this is the weirdness of doing it on camera live, right? Like normally I would figure out all this stuff as I painted and I would be painting a lot slower, but because I'm going faster, I have to make snap decisions, and sometimes I don't like the decisions I made, so I go back and repaint. And that's A-okay, guys. Nobody's going to judge you here for that. No judging. Paint however you want to paint. All right, so that's actually pretty good. And this is a lot like how I did his wing highlight last week, if you remember. All right, so there's a little bit of a bigger highlight. So there we go. We'll get that looking a little bit more like that. That'll blend it in there. When I do the green wash, those two parts should blend in pretty well. I'm going to let those dry. I'm going to look kind of down at his side. Now, since he's curving around, a lot of this area would be in shadow, but it might get a slight highlight because the leg here is going to reflect light back up. So I think I'll do a small highlight here, and maybe just one, the purple down the line of his back will help. But I want something there. I don't want that to be all dead space. So what I might do is I might take my swamp green, because it's really close to black, and kind of paint it over an area there. See that? Now that's subtle, but it works into the fact that there is a greenish glaze. I'm a little bit out of focus. Let me see if I'm trying to, there we go. So works into the fact that we've got a greenish glaze here on the leg. So it doesn't look too jarring, but it's not too far off black. What do you plan to paint after I finish this dragon? The other dragon, Roland! Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm just catching up on chat because I've been talking and painting. Yeah, Roland GSC, I've got essentially the dragon that's fighting this one is probably going to be a white or a silver dragon. I haven't quite decided yet. So I need to do that one. I want to do this entire thing on camera. I want to paint the entire Dance of Death for you guys on camera. That is the goal, really, that I'd like to kind of do. So yeah, now I'm going to pop in a little bit of purple in here.
So Anne, just as a heads up to our viewers, since the old Bones 5 is getting ready to start soon, there's been some word around the old Scuttlebutt that you're going to do maybe something special during that time, take a little break from these guys?
Yeah, that's right. Those people asked me to do some things. Yes, Sapphire Oko, we have a Twitch, and I am on here painting a dragon on it. And if you tune in tomorrow night, you can see Ed and Ron, two of our Reaper owners, kibitz about new and upcoming things for Reaper on the Reaper Live as well. Yeah, Kazmania, I bet you would love to see me do NMM Silver. I might just take you up on it, but I'm going to lose sanity points. I don't know if you want that. How do you get that shiny effect? Sharp highlights, Neurocog. Bringing it up to white makes it look shiny, especially if you fade it out. You got to kind of pay attention to where the light is falling on the dragon. Just like down here, I'm not going to bring it up like on this side. I'm not going to bring it up as light, because if the light is falling from this direction, this is kind of in recess. So, it's that white highlight is, and you can get that more easily by wet blending, which is why I've been kind of smooshing paint together. So like if you put down your purple, and then you pick up a little bit of white, and you keep it kind of where on the area the light would fall on, you can create the illusion of that shininess. So, yes, as Collins prompted me to talk about, so Bones 5 Kickstarter is going to start very soon, a couple weeks. Exciting, right? And last week, if you'll recall, I showed you guys a dragon that I was painting for Reaper that is in that Bones 5 Kickstarter. I should have brought it up here, and I didn't think I'd need it, foolish me. But just like that, I will be doing some painting of Bones 5 models, specialness, just to show you guys kind of the different, some of the different awesome pieces that are going to go into that line. Maybe we'll pick like models and do a special technique on each or something like that. I don't know. I'll look at what Ron's got on his desk. It's always fun to have an excuse to go look at what Ron has on his desk and then steal a bunch of it. That's kind of, what I live for. So we will grab some Bones 5 models and take a break from Mr. Dragon and his friend just for a little while. And we'll do some other stuff that's fun. And then we'll go back to Mr. Dragon. I do want to finish Mr. Dragon for you guys. I do want to finish this entire Dance of Death. Because it is, now that I've put so much darn time into it, you just get to that point where you're like, dang it, I'm going to finish this thing if it kills me. And it might. All right, so I put a little bit of a lighter highlight. And it really doesn't matter. Like, I actually have a little bit of runic purple mixed into this highlight. But it's still, it doesn't, look wrong or anything, because I've got purple mixed into a whole bunch of places up here. Now, I did lose a little bit of my purple up here on my green highlight, so I might want to grab some more of that. Yeah, and I am trying to keep this a little bit more subtle, you are right. I don't want it to hit you over the head with the colors, because in reality, he's a black dragon, and I want the colors to just be showing up in the highlights. I still want the majority of the dragon to be black. So I've mapped out in runic purple here, kind of some highlights on these two limbs. And now I'm going to throw a bunch of swamp green over them. It's pretty strong swamp green there. You can see how thick it is by how it fell off the side of the palette here. This is why a well palette is handy. Kind of lets you know what your paint consistency is. I'm going to add a little bit more water to it because it's easier to build up layers than to try to take layers off. Taking layers off meaning repainting at this point. You can kind of see how thick it is. So it's kind of like a little bit of a thin wash at this point. I'm going to glaze, which means I'm not going to let it pool. I'm just going to paint it over the surface What I do want to do before I do that, though, is bring some of these highlights on this dragon arm and leg up to pure white. The reason is that then what I will get is what I've got here, which is you will be able to see the green over the areas that are white. So let's see here. Making sure I'm not missing you guys' questions. Okay, you're good. You are all just happily chatting. That's good. I like to see that. I like to see happily chatting while I paint my dragon. All right, gonna bring in more of a pure white highlight. Bring in more of a pure white highlight up here on Mr. Dragon's arm. And I'm kind of concentrating just on the areas where the light's really gonna hit. There we go. And I might just kind of be streaky about it. Like, I'm just kind of dabbing the paint on there. I'm not being real precise with it. Some of that is going to go away. That imprecision is going to be hidden when I throw the green over it. Some of it I may regret and need to blend. We will find out. Oh yeah, remember your hashtag free. We're giving away some Master Series brushes today, the Kolinsky Sable ones, the Aught 5, which I think is the most useful size. Throw some swamp green over the top of it. Ooh, that greened it out. That greened it out so much I lost a lot of my purple. So when you see that and you're sad, right away rinse out your brush, come back, and wick off that excess paint until you see your purple again. At least a little bit of your purple. There, I've got a little purple coming back. See it? Perfect. We want some of our purple to still show. What that tells me is that my green is a little bit strong, so maybe I'll transfer it over into my other well and add just a little bit more water. Whenever your paint puddles in your well palette get too big, just grab a big brush full and transfer it into a secondary palette and then add water from there. This can happen if you're lightening a color. You're adding white, you're trying to get a highlight color, and you realize you need to add more white, but it's just not making enough progress, and you need it to be, you know, you're almost full on your little well. Then just transfer it over with a couple of big brushfuls and continue from there. So
well,
that's why I like these palettes, yeah?
What about people who have a wet palette? Is there kind of a rule of thumb for those folks?
For this sort of thing, actually, you almost always want a well palette when you're doing glazing. The reason is that if you thin a paint this much on a wet palette, it's just going to slurp all into the sponge, right? Because it's a wet palette. That's what it does. And so that is the problem with using really thin paint on wet palettes, is that it tends to, your paint doesn't stay very wet for very long, especially if you're using things like flow improver in it, which helps it flow and helps it diffuse, but also helps it all sink into your sponge and not stain your palette. So for glazing, I almost always will say, unless you're doing very small areas, like a lot of painters who use wet palettes will just spot glaze, which by which I mean they will grab some paint, pull it out, grab some water, and add it to it, and just make just like a brush full of glaze. And then they'll just glaze that one area. And that's entirely doable with a wet palette. That's the type of glazing you see more often. But when you're doing a big dragon like this, you may want to keep a well palette around so you can build big puddles of glaze, so you don't have to keep glazing and keep building every single brush full of glaze. So I've got Mr. Dragon. Let's test him. Come here, Mr. Dragon, look up at the sky. All right, so we've at least got some highlights going. His leg obviously needs more work. I'm starting to like that area a little bit more, though. I'll have to refine it later. It's really patchy. When you're doing a big wet blend glob together like this, what your goal is to just get stuff down. You just want to get down an initial layer. Then you can go back and you can tighten it up and, you know, put in little tiny highlights and edge all the scales or do whatever you want to do. But at least getting your basic highlight, shadow, and midtone down takes a lot of the work out and a lot of the energy, right? Where sometimes you look at a model and so little of it is done and you just feel the energy go out of you in a gigantic whoosh and you're like, oh, there's so much, I don't want to do anything. This gets around that. Yeah, you can also, Poleth is right, 2 brushes is called 2-brush blending. I essentially do 2-brush blending, but I do it with 1 brush, is what 2-brush people tell me. So it's all the same, it's wet blending, and whether you do it with 1 brush or do it with 2 is up to you. The 2-brush method I found was just a little bit annoying for me because keeping the second brush around, I was just like, why do I even need this? Because I was taught to do it with 1 brush, so for me it was weird. But a lot of people really like the 2-brush style. My boyfriend does a lot of it, so it is totally a viable style and fun and can help you paint things faster, just like wet blending. Yeah, and you can totally keep a wet brush handy. That is absolutely true. And that's the two brush. Yep. So if you look up two brush blending online, I bet you can find some videos of it. But yeah, it's all in what kind of tools you want to utilize. I'm just going to throw some more purple on here because more purple is awesome.
And Safaroko?
Yeah.
Apologies if I butchered that. I did have a question. It's kind of past your chat.
Oh,
now, so
what
I'll
is
just
it?
ask I have trouble with blending out paint. I put some paint on the mini, rinse out the brush, and by the time I get back to the paint, it's partially dry and don't blend out very well. Any tips?
Okay. So if you're wet blending like this, and and you could keep a wet brush around just like they mentioned, but you could put it on. What I usually do is I put the paint on very thick when I'm doing this sort of thing. So let me get down to Mr. Leg here. Yeah, let's do the leg here. Let me see. Again, I'm going to hold the model so I can see where my highlights should go, and for the most part, I see that I need to do this whole foot. So let's do it. Now I am using Safaroko. I am using fairly, you can see my paint consistency here, paint puddles. So there we go. So you can kind of see it's fairly thick, like, you can't really see through it, but it is a little bit watery. Like if I drag my brush through it, it'll flow back together and self-level. That's kind of the paint consistency I'm at. It's probably 2-to-1 paint to water, maybe even 3-to-1. And that's, I like that consistency for wet blending because it's just a little bit more wet, so it'll stay a little bit more wet. So if I put that down, I'm sitting here, it's still wet, I can go over here, load up my brush with something else. The other thing to remember when you're doing this is I don't actually dry off my brush between layers. I just keep smooshing. Smooshing is my technical term for wet blending. And so I'm just continually blending as I go. And so I never rinse out my brush. I just pick up another color. Picked up some white. Going to bring it in. And as you can see, since all of my paints are at that level of thinness, everything is staying wet a lot longer when I'm putting it on the model because I put down a pretty thick coat to start with. So as I add each color, and since I'm not rinsing out my brush, too dry in. Yeah, when you thin your paint, it actually dries pretty fast, and that's something to remember, especially if you're not putting a lot of it on. We've got our discombobulated cast today. We've got.
Yeah, it sounds like someone doesn't know how to silence the old cell phone when they come in the production environment.
Oh no! Somebody came in the production environment with an unsilenced cell phone.
Yeah.
Even I know to do that, and I'm clueless.
One would think that he would know that, given how often he's supposed to.
Yeah, guys. I mean, when I was taught to wet blend, I was actually taught to do it with totally unthinned paint because you wanted it to cover over your primer and get your base and your highlight down all in one go. But I realized pretty soon that I could just put down a base coat like I would with any paint job, and then I could use thinner paint and have it stay wetter for longer. So that's kind of just how, again, it's all experimentation, right? There is no invalid technique here. The only invalid technique is one that just doesn't work for you. You should never let anybody tell you that, oh no, you're doing it wrong. You should do it this other way, or, oh, you should only use one brush. You should only use two. Any tips for practicing wet blending? You're a little scared of it. Actually, dragon wings are great for it, Nuricog. So like, here, we'll put Dragon aside for a second since I wet blended his foot. So on big broad surfaces like this, it can be much easier to learn about your paint consistency and everything. So like, get your consistency down. I used a black base coat because I wanted this to be a black dragon. Put the paint on pretty thickly. You don't want it to like puddle and pool, but you want it to be obviously wet. Throw your other color together. Like I said, I did not actually thin out or wash out my brush between these two colors. I'm just blending them together. And you can tell that my green is really thinned down by how much that purple is puddling as I put into it. But I'm not too worried about that, actually. I can work with it. Now, if you have a lot of texture on a surface, like if you've got, if you were doing this on scales, what you risk is since this first green is so wet, this purple might actually kind of sink into the cracks like a wash and leave exposed texture above it. So you might get a lighter color in your cracks. But this can be used. This could actually be abused. I actually did it on the dragon I'm working on downstairs. I got that effect and I went, ooh, that looks cool. Let's just use that. Grab some more purple. But yeah, on a big wing like this, I like practicing wet blending on this because right away you're going to get a feel for like what shape of brush works best for you. You know, how much do you have to go back and forth? Because I'm going back and forth between the green and the pink to try to blend it in. You know, this paint is a little bit thin, so it's leaving it a little bit more brush strokes, so I have to think about that. I think thicker paint is more forgiving, but again, I still thin my paint a little bit. I got a little bit of a hair there. I'm going to take off paint when you want to take off paint. So rinse out your brush if you want to take paint off of a model. Looks like I've got a little hair stuck in the primer. I'll have to fix that. But there you go. So, you know, you can kind of see what I'm doing there. Yeah, worried about it washing too much. Yeah, thicken your paint. If you seem like you've got too much of a wash thing going on, just thicken up your paint a little bit and play around with it. I mean, you might even get some value trying thick out of the bottle paint first and kind of observing what goes right and what goes wrong, and then thin it just a little bit and kind of keep track of it. Like, it never hurts to keep a little paint journal of what you're doing. So that you can make a note that, like, say, oh, well, a 3-to-1 paint to water ratio is the best for me for wet blending, right? And then even more so, maybe eventually you figure out why that is. You know, maybe it's that you know, with the size of brush you use, like, it just tends to work a little better, or maybe it works better with bigger or smaller brushes. Yeah, I'm trying to kind of get those wing creases up there. But the best thing about wet blending, and the reason not to be scared of it, is that it's actually kind of fun and relaxing. You can make, sorry, I'm catching up on chat. But you can make mistakes with this, and it's not like it's unfixable. It's actually just, even while it's still wet, you can correct it pretty strongly. I mean, grab some black and kind of cover up what you've done, and then blend more purple into it. You know, it's really just kind of a no sweat way to paint, and it like I said, it sets up a nice base for you. So then you can come back and make, you know, like the claw marks like I did on my other wing. For those of you who haven't seen other wing, there's other wing, and he's got all sorts of slashes and scars and marks on his wings. So yeah, so I mean, this gives you the base for that, and then you can go with it. All right, so my missing questions.
At this juncture, Ann, mostly people are just talking about what you're doing, and we got some new people on our chat as well.
Okay, yeah, I see Lady B Miniatures, and I wasn't sure if I missed a question. So anyway, just if I miss a question, feel free to say, oh, you missed a question, here it is again, and Collins will see it, or Justin will see it, and they will let me know. Now we're back to our purple foot, which is way too purple. So let's see. I'm going to get my white. Probably going to need, now, if you have started to wet blend a thing and then your dog suddenly starts to vomit and you have to run outside, or, you know, any other, you know, random emergency that may have drawn you away from your dragon painting or miniature painting in general, then you come back and your paint is dry. It's like, now do I have to redo the whole thing? No. You just have to redo, like in this case, I was on my final highlight, so I just have to redo that spot. I just have to redo where I was going to put my highest highlight. So I just re-wet that area, and I come back in with my white, and I could even use a little bit of layering if I want to just kind of carry it up here and not really wet blend, just kind of block it in. And up here, you know, I didn't really get a lot of these scales as much as I should have. So I can, like I said, just go back in with just kind of putting a layer of color down, and maybe taking a little bit of a darker purple and blending that in. Don't sweat it is what this comes down to, guys. This kind of just rough blocking in is really stress relieving because you're not worried about it being perfect. And so many of us worry a lot about whether our stuff is not good enough. And the reason I like doing this is that you really aren't worrying about perfect. Perfect comes later when you've got time and you're ready to do like detailing on scales and stuff like that. But you don't need perfect right now. Not when you're doing this, not when you're blocking stuff in. You're just trying to get your basic highlights down. That's all. All right, so that's pretty okay. I'm going to try to glaze this with green. Get my green together. When I'm glazing, by the way, I pretty much have my brush full of paint. You can't really see it, but my brush is loaded to the gills with paint. This is not usual. Usually I control my paint a lot. I maybe only dip like a third to half of the brush in the paint because I want a lot of control. But with this stuff, when I'm just going to splash a bunch of green over this, not so much. Now I could just leave that, but I'd lose all my purple. So rinse out my brush and dab it off a little bit. I still want a little bit of that purple to show through. But it does, notice how the green just takes that purple right down. Now you can do this with a whole bunch of other colors. It actually, you could do it anytime you do a complementary glaze. So green is not the complementary color of purple. Yellow is, but this particular green, swamp green, has a lot of yellow in it. So that's why it's muting this purple so extremely when I put it over the top. It just is working like that. It's almost acting like a complementary color. So that's not too bad. Mr. Dragon, how you doing? Your lower paw is very bright. So we'll see. Do you show your workday here on the stream? No, Lady B, my office is actually downstairs. So, and often I'm making paint. I don't actually work full time as a staff painter for Reaper anymore. These days, they are having me paint a lot more, but my whole day is usually not painting. It's actually making paint, and right now it's writing the paint department manual and a whole bunch of other stuff. Yeah. That is an interesting idea. We aren't really set up to stream down in my office. I'd have to go up here and paint all day. I'm going to actually refine this foot a little bit to make sure it's reading okay. So it's pretty right now, I kind of want to look at it. Let's see, I'm going to turn it to the camera, make sure that my highlights are showing up. All right, that's not too bad. Now, what I would do if I was ready to kind of finish this area is I would go back with black and I would line between these scales. So I'm gonna I need to pick up I'm switching brushes to a smaller, thinner brush, which is my DaVinci Maestro Series 10, size 1. It's a long, narrow brush. I'm thinning my black down a lot so that it comes off the brush nicely. And I'm only putting a little bit of paint on the brush. See, only about a third of it. Yeah, doing everything live on a stream, because we only have one room really hooked up for it, is a little difficult for us right now, but it would be the eventual goal to be able to give you guys tons of content.
There's definitely talk, though, with the acquisition of the new space across the way that will be upgrading both the size and functionality of our studio.
Yeah, yep. So maybe, and we'll get thrown into streaming a whole day of painting sometime. It might be kind of boring for you guys, I don't know. But I guess a lot of you could just come on for a couple hours, paint along, and then go back on your merry ways. And we could get people from more time zones. So pretty much lining, see how that brings out the scales on the foot. I'm going to kind of go in and correct some of these areas I filled in. This is why I wasn't worried about individual scales when I was doing my wet blend. I knew I could come back in and make sure that those scales were visible. This is also a time where I can thin down some black and make sure that I have enough black area for this to look black. Remember, give Anne the Duck Dynasty camera treatment. Please, no. Any local those sweet DaVinci brushes. I order mine online, Trashorama. And often I buy them. I used to buy them at ReaperCon a lot because there was a store that had them on hand. And it's always nice to see them in person. But usually dickblick.com, which is a big art supply store online. That's probably the best place as far as pricing. They are expensive. They're about the same probably as a Winsor Newton these days. There are brushes like Rosemary that are a little bit less expensive, and I hear that they're, you know, they're good also. I haven't actually tried them to see how they work with my particular style yet, because I haven't gotten the gumption up to order from England. So I've gotten a little broad with this highlight, but that's because if you think about it, when the light comes down, it's only going to hit the edge of this arm, but this foot is actually kind of flat to the light source. So it's more splayed out, whereas this paw is more up and down. So that's why you're, yeah, Blick is good, Silverthorn, you're right. Yeah, I think out loud all the time. Like when I'm at home, I talk to my dogs. I'm like, Kiri, do you think that, you know, this highlight is appropriate? Yeah, Rosemary and Company are nice and pretty cheap. I don't know if they've got I mean, I know they have shapes that are more like what I use. I just haven't done a lot of experimentation, but I know a lot of friends who really like them, and they especially like the price. So if you're looking to get into Kolinsky sables and you want to try it out and not spend a mint, try Rosemary Company. And or if you have friends who have beautiful brushes and are willing to let you try them out, that's also a good way to kind of figure out. There we go. Well, that whole side is pretty okay. I need to do something up here on the neck. I'm going to lay down some olive green and then go over with some purple, I think. Oh, time to go back to big brush. I'm just trying to follow everybody's stuff.
So, Anne, if I was just getting into painting, about how many brushes and sizes would you suggest someone like myself utilize?
Probably 3, actually. You want a big brush for fast base coating, especially if you're doing big models. You want a moderate size brush. I would call that like a Reaper 0, like in the Taklon, like it would be a 0 or a 1 in the Kolinsky, probably more like, I'm trying to think of my Reaper sizes, probably the 05 actually that we're giving away free this show is a good basic highlighting brush. And then you want a detail brush, like a brush, especially if you're just starting out, because sometimes you won't quite know when you're, you won't know how fast you're going to go through brushes, right? And so if you turn out to be kind of rough on brushes, which some of us, despite our best attempts, are, then you want to keep one brush just for fine detail that you only use for fine detail, and that'll help preserve its life and its usefulness to you for a bit longer. So I'd say 3. The big brush would also be good for things like washes and glazes, and then the medium-sized brush would be good for layering highlights and stuff like that. I'm just mucking around at this point. I think I want to add a little bit of green. I think I lost some green. We all hate it when we lose some green. The eye was actually the easiest part of this dragon's head, believe it or not. Totally easy. Let's see, I'm just going to put some green highlights a little bit on these scales because I still feel like I didn't get enough green. And I could go back and try to re-wet blend, or I could just put in some greenish highlights. All right, yeah, let's do the neck. Where's my big brush? Big brush. Big brush is back. You know what I think? I want a little bit thicker swamp green, so dragon, sit, stay. Dragon's pretty good at sitting and staying. Swamp green, 9175, is a beautiful, beautiful dark olive green. See? You definitely want this color in your repertoire. It is lovely transparent, and it does a great wash or great glaze. And I'm also using it to paint my other dragon, my Bones 5 dragon, down in my office right now. Although I'm not using purple for that one. Different colors. Doing kind of a weird color thing with that dragon. Not the usual. Huh? Whoop, whoop, whoop. Somebody's talking about me. Dragons are good at breathing fire. Sitting. Yes. Is there going to be a Reaper Discord? You know, we keep asking about that, and we keep getting told we would love that eventually, which is probably still the answer. I would love to see a Reaper Discord because I think our community would really like it, especially our younger community. The forums are great and all, but Discord is a whole different type of thing, and I think a lot of us enjoy that engagement a little bit more, that immediate engagement in chat thing. So I hope that Reaper will eventually get a Discord. But once we get it, then we have to get some volunteers to help us kind of ride herd on it and admin it. So, you know, it's all kind of a process. I do like Discord a lot. I have one for my Patreon, which I guess I should mention at this point, since I usually do. A lot of the people who come in for the stream are actually on my Patreon, so I really appreciate that when they show up. It's under Painting Big, so patreon.com/paintingbig, because I tend to paint bigger stuff on there, like dragons and busts and stuff like that. And I talk a lot about Reaper Master Series and why it works the way it works. In fact, I'm just about to put up a PDF and a short video from my $5 tier about the Reaper additives, which are things like the anti-shine additive and flow improver and how to build washes and things like that. So I have a lot of fun with it. I actually really love my Patreon. It is a good time. All right, so that was fast. Yay, now his neck actually shows up. Awesome. And I think I want to put a little bit of green up here as well on the neck. Just a stripe of it. The cool thing about painting a textured surface like this is that even when you are going super fast, where you're just really just putting, like I just put down a stripe of color there, and yet it's still, it works because the texture is helping you, where you don't have to, if this was a smooth surface, I would have to blend it to make it look good. But because there's texture, you can get away with making things a little bit more rough, and they still look cool, and your flaws aren't as immediately, your blending flaws aren't as immediately apparent. So you can keep it a little rougher, and it can still look great. And then when you have time, see, there's the top of his neck scales. See, I added that green stripe down the middle, and I just lightened it a little bit. So then when you've got time, you can even come in and maybe do some edges here to make the scales stand out a little bit better. And then it looks like so. So Anne,
Lady Winters has a kind of a good question. I think it applies to, well, a lot of people as we get ready to go through bone stuff. And it's, what's one bit of advice you can give for someone who hasn't painted a bones miniature?
Oh, okay. Don't prime it. That is my first piece of advice.
That's a touchy subject from time to time.
I know. Ed likes to say prime it, or that you can prime it. And in my opinion, the way that I've had the best success with painting bones, and this is a bones, is by not priming it. By just, I will wash it with hot water and with a bit of dish soap. I'll just get one of my plastic mixing bowls out and just fill it with hot water with a little bit of dish soap. Throw the models in, swoosh them around, rinse them, let them dry in a towel overnight. It's really, it seems to take some of the mold release off. It makes the surface a little bit more prepared. And then if I use my paint full strength on my first coat, I don't have problems with it not sticking. So it's that sort of thing. Harder to paint detail in smaller miniatures. Are more common than the larger miniatures. Would I be willing to paint a smaller fig? Dr. Bob, I do feature some small figures on my my Patreon because I can do PDFs on that. It's really hard. Oh yeah, actually, Avrelina, if you want, I can do that right now with his one wing that's finished. So here's Mr. Dragon with his finished wing. Isn't that so cool? Actually, that makes him look like a lot more done by putting his wings on. His other wing is not done yet, so I can put them on to show you guys like what he looks like, kind of, if I can get this on camera, in focus. But yeah, so he's kind of like flying up like that, trying to eat his not friend who is attacking him. So yeah, as I go through this, yeah, the pseudo-iridescence is just with the green and purple next to each other when you use, which red sable? Red sable is another word for, Kolinsky is just the highest grade of red sable. So, let's see here. Hi, Anne. Hi, HW Customizer. Brian, yes, I'm trying to keep up with you guys because you're talking a lot today. Brown liner is a great base coat for bones. If you thin it with a little brush on sealer, it'll actually outline all of the details on your model and let you know where they are and what things are a little bit easier. Yeah, reshaping your brushes with a little bit of brush soap, like pink soap. Yeah. Red sable, Nurikog, are you talking about the Reaper sables or... Which brand are you talking about? Or are you talking about which brand should you use? Yeah, spray on prime can get you in trouble, Lady B, because solvents are involved and they often will not work well with PVC. So they'll react and then you'll get tacky and it will never fully cure. Yeah, automotive primer definitely has a lot of bad solvents and does things. What's my favorite type of mini to paint? Reaper Scott B, I love busts. I absolutely adore them. I love the fact that I can get really detailed with expression and eyes and everything. I wish Reaper did more of them. I keep asking. Yeah, the scars and stuff on the wings, the Reventine, yeah. Yeah, especially once you've got the whole dragon together, then it just looks like his wings are really nicked up. I like that. I would not, Lady B. If you're going to use anything to prime bones, I actually recommend Tester's Dull Coat, which is a see-through spray that's usually used for finishing work, but it has enough texture to hold paint, and it does not have an adverse effect on anything I've tried. It doesn't even melt styrofoam, as most primers will. Okay. Reaper Miniatures Colin says Citadel is a good. He uses them.
Yeah, I use them as my base coat though, so I don't really use them like primer as much as I'm trying to use it to get all of my miniature painted either black or blue or gold. Okay. Real fast.
Yeah. Smaller things. PDF. Oh yeah, Dr. Bob. Thanks for the reminder. I'm sorry. There's so much going on this time. So getting a smaller figure to show up well on camera is really difficult. I've tried it at home with my setup, and we have tried it here with our big camera setup. It's hard to get close enough where you can really see what the brush is doing and keep it in focus. And not make it impossible for us to try to paint on it. So it's really difficult. But what I can do with small miniatures is PDFs, which is something that I can do on my Patreon, but I can't do here necessarily with Reaper. We don't do that sort of content yet, except for like with our Dungeon Dwellers. When we were doing that promo last year, we did actually put up painting guides for all of those online with pictures. So that sort of thing works best with small figures. It's hard to get video to focus on such a small level. I'm still trying. I'm waiting for the webcam that'll do it. Can you scroll back a little bit for me, Collins, up there? I missed somebody. What was it?
Scrolling gets really difficult. So
okay, can you look at a couple up is what was my most difficult challenge or most difficult mini? I just missed it.
I think, let me scroll back up here real quick. Just like make sure I get the name right. Dr. Bob was asking a question about what was your favorite mini?
Or there was a bigger fail. That was it. What was my biggest fail painting a miniature? When I listened to Ron, that was my biggest fail.
Wow. Well, shots fired already.
Oh yeah, you betcha. Actually, I think it was a model that I was right after I got hired at Reaper, and he wanted me to do it in a particular way, and I did it, and I hated it so much I threw it out. Let's see here.
Look, Rhonda's in the chat with us.
Hey, Rhonda!
Answering some questions.
Okay, to follow up on what Anne said about dull coat, it does work as a primer, but the paint job will not be as sturdy, correct? Oh, yeah, and she's right. There are facts posted in the bones section of the forum where you can see the products that she used.
Yay, forums.
Yay, forum! So, reapermini.com, go to the forum and look in the bones forum, and Rhonda spent a lot of time testing stuff on what would work on bones. I'm looking at other stuff. Yeah, Dr. Bob. So thus the big figs. Yeah, I mean, part of it is that I just love painting big. Because I find that I really do. I love busts. I love big garage kits. I mean, the Overwatch statue took forever, but it was super fun. I was just being tempted earlier by another garage kit earlier today, and I was trying to resist. Lady B, I think, yes, Rhonda is talking about the Reaper forums. She is on there as Wren. W-R-E-N. Yeah, there we go. Biggest painting fail. Yeah. All right. Unthinned plain acrylic paint works best as a first coat on bones. Yes, listen to Bird with a Brush, everybody. Listen to Rhonda. That's Rhonda Bender. She teaches at ReaperCon. She's a pro. She does a lot of our tutorials. She wrote our Learn to Paint kits. This is the pro that you have in our chat right now. Oh, yeah, thanks for who asked the question there, Blue's Clues. How long did it take for me to be good or at least decent at painting? Jerry, it's a really hard question because I started painting when I was a little kid, and I was bad for a long time, but I also wasn't painting very consistently, right? So I would say that when I went to college and then I started playing D&D with friends, that was when I started painting more, and I got like, you know, I could stay in the lines and I could block paint pretty well. But during that time at college, I started working at a game store. And they pretty much took one look at me and said, you can paint, you need to play Warhammer with us. And that's when I started getting better because I would look at White Dwarf magazine, which is Games Workshop's mag, and the Golden Demon models that were the international awards that they had. And I would be like, how do they do that? And I would try to figure it out. And in those days, there really wasn't internet, so I had to kind of figure it out by myself. So I think it took me, you know, over several years, I got slowly better. And then I was at the point where I could sell my miniatures for maybe 50 to $100 each. If I was doing like a mounted vampire night or I was doing something like that for a Games Workshop. I was selling my stuff on consignment at the store. And then it occurred to me I could actually do freelance. Like I could maybe make a job out of this. So I quit my real job and I moved over to Baltimore and started working part-time for Games Workshop so I could get the discount, the employee discount. And I started just concentrating on getting better at painting because I could actually make a better living if I got better. And over that 6-month period where I actually could spend time, like it makes a difference if you just go and say, I'm going to give myself as much time as I need to paint the best face I can, right? I'm going to give myself as much time as I need to paint this cape, you know. If you concentrate on one thing on every model that you paint and you try to just give yourself enough time to do the best you can at it, you will get better very quickly. I did that over the course of 6 months with eBay and commissions and got to the level where that very next year I won a Golden Demon myself. I went from probably decent commission painter to national award winner in 6 months. But it definitely took focus, even more than time. It wasn't so much that I could do it like 40 hours a week, so much as I actually was focusing on how do I blend? How do I get better at this? How do I get better at that? I think that even if you only have half an hour a night, you could probably see a huge improvement over your painting in the course of 6 months if you focused on technique and then went from there. I see that kind of improvement at Paint Club. People who come to Paint Club every week and really, really try to improve their game, they see huge improvement over the course of months. It doesn't take years. GW offering an employee discount. I know. Well, Red Hulk, they're trying to suck you into their franchise like 100%. So, oh, what's a garage kit? Really? Somebody doesn't know what a... Okay, so garage kit is kind of the term for big resin statue. And I don't know why I guess they got called garage kits because the original versions were probably cast in people's garages. I have no idea. Yeah, any gigantic, like now it's more statues. But so if a statue is like 1/6 scale, so it's like a foot tall, a garage kit is usually around that scale, but it's a resin kit that you put together. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. So you worked for the armory. That's funny. Yes, Nurikog, I actually did go to school for art, but I'll tell you, I learned a heck of a lot more painting miniatures than I learned. Hi, Ron.
Hello.
Are you sticking your head in because you heard me mention your name?
No, you did. Speak of the devil.
The devil appears.
No.
Anyway, I'm getting distracted. I'm talking way too much. I'm not painting enough. Mr. Dragon needs highlights. All right, so hold on. Oh yeah. I mean, you could give me if you're gonna give me face cam when I'm explaining, just warn me before you give me face cam, so I make sure I'm not still looking at the dragon or something.
And I'm gonna let me know when you want to be on the screen. I'm
all
not
right.
gonna take liberty to just move cameras around because I trust you.
Well, by all means, remind me on occasion.
He's not qualified enough.
Yeah. Also,
trained.
most garage kits are low volume. That's true. They didn't make very much. Oh yeah, we were talking about my background in art. Pardon me while I position Mr. Dragon appropriately. So if we look at Mr. Dragon in his appropriate position, we see that this entire side of him needs highlights. So I'm going to start on that while I talk about art school. All right, art school.
But that side's going to be next to the rock, right? So when he's actually on the...
no, because his tail pegs into the rock. This is actually up in the air, and the dragon is like here. So do we have a copy? All right, awesome. Yeah, and his wing is above him, so it's going to impact it. Here, Collins is going to bring us the thing. And now we do need to go to face cam so you guys can see. So Collins is going to do that.
Yeah, we're going to cut on over.
Face cam. There we go. Yay. Hi, guys. We'll talk about art school in a second. So Dragon's position is here. And if I look at him in the light, and this is useful, by the way, you want to do this. When you have a big thing like this and you're trying to figure out, well, what needs highlights and what's in shadow, looking at it under a light source is invaluable because it really does let you go, oh, okay, so this is in shadow, this is in highlight. If you have a base coat on the model already, you can even just take your brush with a slightly lighter version of that paint and just kind of paint on highlight sections so that you don't forget. Or a lot of people take a photo with it on the phone just to remember, okay, that's where my highlights should be for this to look right. Because when you get into things like this where there are wings that are blocking the light and, you know, it's all crazy and dynamic, it's easy to forget. And as you move the model, shadows and highlights may change if you've got like more than one light source like we do here. So definitely, what base color Reaper paints? Oh, okay. I can work on that in a second. But yeah, so that's the dragon. So we can see, there we go. So you guys can see that a lot of his side there is in the light, right? You can see there's a big shadow under the wing, but most of his side here is going to be in the light. So we got to remember that while we're painting him. Awesome. Thank you, Collins. We can go back to minicam and I can talk about art school and how to tell if a color is more this or that. Okay, where's a good angle? That's a good angle right there and you guys can all see him. Good. All right, I'm going to start with my green while I talk about art school. Okay, so art school was cool and all, but when I was in art school, there wasn't very much of an emphasis on technique. And a lot of the instructors I had were very much just hand you a brush, assume you knew enough, and tell you to just go to it, right? And I guess it would depend, right, on what who your instructor was. And I guess if I would have been taught by a photorealist painter, then maybe he probably would have concentrated more on technique. But as it was, I felt like I walked out of art school not with a very good grounding in like acrylics. I did a lot of watercolor and oils in art school. And I actually hated acrylics because I hated the fast drying time and nobody had really taught me how to deal with them. So it became incredibly ironic to me when I went out into the world, started painting miniatures, and became a master level at acrylics, and I still can't paint a decent watercolor. So I guess... and I find this thing throughout life, okay? Don't think that you don't have an advantage just because you didn't go to art school or because you don't have an art background. What matters in life is that you follow your passion. And you're going to learn faster if you're working on something that you care about. So if you care about miniature painting, you're going to learn about it as much as you would have learned in art school, maybe even more, just by caring about it and trying things, reading things, and talking to people. And being open-minded about it, right? So it's just like, it's like those armchair experts who, you know, get to know as much or more than the people who actually have PhDs in a topic. It's perfectly possible to do that. You might not have as extensive of an education in a topic. There might be holes in what you know, but you can easily, you know, teach yourself a lot of this stuff. I mean, I don't have a degree in paint chemistry, but I know enough that I can actually talk about it and have my paint chemist, you know, supplies distributor look at me and go, yeah, that's exactly how it works. So, and I had no background in that at all. I taught myself. I looked up studies on the internet to learn how paint acts the way it acts. So yeah, self-taught is a thing. Don't ever think that you are a lesser artist, miniatures artist, just because you don't have an art school background. Mine didn't teach me much at all that applied to this. I would say that right now, mini painting has made me a much better canvas painter. It's actually the reverse. This hobby has taught me more about lighting, it's taught me more about composition, and it's taught me a lot more about technique. So
speaking of that, I'm going to give a shout out to old Rhonda, watching her on some of the Facebooks. She's got some painting that she's been showing, some really good eyes on that.
Oh, yeah. Good. Oh, yeah, that's right, because Rhonda's been working on her 2D art as well. So shout out to Rhonda. Okay, so now, hey, Evil Elvis, it's Ann and Justin and Collins this week. It's the evil painting trio. Europe friendly times. Yeah, Juria, I got it. We actually thought, originally we looked at this time slot and we're like, wow, for the US, that's really weird, but it is a decent one for Europe, so that's why kind of we're sticking to it. And some of our Asian friends can get onto in our Aussies. You had a much better teacher for the basics. Good, Silverthorn. I'm glad that there is somebody out there who is teaching decently in art school. And I'm sure there are a lot. But it essentially taught me, it really just taught me that you shouldn't ever like look down on yourself if you didn't go to art school, right? It taught me that you can get just as much out of self-teaching if you are devoted to it and you put passion into it that you can by getting a 4-year degree in art school. So art is one of those things where it's out there and a lot of it is how you interface with reality and then interpret that in what you do creatively. So that's not something they can ever really teach you in a school. So yeah. Do you guys. Don't worry if you don't have an artistic background. You can learn this stuff. Who knows? You might learn or bring up something really, really unique just because you're not taught. Is anyone that does like a watercolor style? Can you read the rest of that to me, Collins? That went off the screen.
Yeah, sorry. So Greek Notice had a question, and I have a style question. Is there anyone that does a watercolor style so that a model looks like a 3D watercolor drawing / painting?
I'm wondering if Jessica Rich is a top-level miniature painter and also a watercolorist. And I know she has been kind of trying to kind of think about that sort of thing, but I don't know that she has actually painted any miniatures as she would paint a watercolor. You have to go from from light to dark with watercolors, and I guess it's just a different style, right? I'm trying to think about like if I know anybody who does while I'm watching your comments. Yeah, I don't know if anybody who really does a watercolor paint style. A lot of us are kind of experimenting a little bit with things. Like there's been a lot of people trying pointillism lately. I always thought it would be kind of fun to do an impressionistic mini paint. But again, the thing with miniature painting, though, is that you need the right model for those things, right? So I think the same is true of watercolor. That if you wanted to do a watercolor style in mini painting, you would need to find a really good model, a good sculpt that also works within that style. And that's the challenge. That's where you're almost like, do I need to become a sculptor? You know, that sort of thing, right? If you can't find the model you're looking for, that's the next evil step, is to become one of those skainters, the sculptor painters. Become like Derek Schubert. Channel the inner Derek Schubert. Reaper Trio is 3 times the fun. It's true. Yeah, painting dog, you're right. And it depends, though, because the kind of watercolor that I traditionally like is wildlife watercolor painting, which does have sharp edges. And in fact, the brushes we use for miniature painting are the brushes used in wildlife watercolor. It's kind of why those little tiny watercolor brushes exist, because that's what a Kolinsky sable is. They're used for oils and watercolors. And so those very small Kolinsky sables were originally meant for people doing high detail watercolors. And a lot of that is wildlife art. So it does really depend on what you're doing. Let's see here. Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Max Powers, for repeating your question. Oh, yeah. Ren has a thing about Stephanie Law and Dark Sword miniatures. Yeah. It's not super easy, Max, but if you thin the color, I find that you get a better feel for what's in it. So like if you thin it to the consistency of a wash and then paint a swatch of the color on watercolor paper, you can usually tell if it's very yellowy or very blue or very red. I think that's because you can see a little bit of the color, since you're putting it over white paper and you've thinned it, you can see the paper through the paint, and I think it gives you a better idea of what colors are in the basis of that. Like if it's very yellowy, I think it's going to show up as very yellowy. It's something that I've actually done with artist acrylics when I'm trying to match an artist color. I'll thin them down and see what pigments float and put them over paper. Come to the dark side, we have green stuff. I know, I'm tempted enough to start sculpting. Yeah, good, Ren. James Wapple has a huge background in watercolor painting. I wouldn't say he doesn't paint them in a direct watercolor style either. I agree. Although some of Wapple's stuff is very watercolor-y because he's very loose with his style. So I think in that, yeah. You're welcome, Max. Blue's Clues. Yeah, painting dog. It would be a fun challenge. I was thinking about a lot of this. Actually, I was just in Florida visiting my uncle this past weekend. And I went to the Salvador Dali Museum. If any of you didn't know, there is an amazing Salvador Dali museum in Florida, out in St. Petersburg, which is on the west coast, the Gulf Coast of Florida. And oh my gosh, mind-blowing. Like the really big paintings are there, like the 15 feet tall ones. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, how could you do surrealist miniatures? Because boy, wouldn't that be awesome? But it would be you'd have to sculpt. You'd have to learn to sculpt and convert at the very least to do it. But you know, I think a lot of us who are into art and inventive and always looking for a new thing, I think a lot of us tend to think about traditional painting movements and like, how could you do that in minis, you know? And I like that. Like, I hope that that our hobby never punishes that, right? I don't want to see like a style of mini painting that becomes like the accepted style. I want us all to keep pushing the envelope. Oh, hi, Sigwolf, hi. All right, good. Yeah, Shawnald. The Dali Museum is amazing, isn't it? Like, I needed like at least another hour there. I did not plan adequately, but it was super fun. I did buy a print. But yeah, I was all actually seeing those paintings in person. Like, it really... Trashorama. So funny. You know, I guess you could. You're right. Although you gotta be careful with a lighter. Jennifer Haley used to do that when she was doing banners. She would take a plastic banner from Games Workshop, hold it up like essentially next to a candle and reshape it so it looked like it was blowing in the wind. And she was the one who told me, be very careful when you do this. It is very easy to hit catastrophe mode. So be very careful with heat and styrene and plastic. You could get some very unexpected results. Oh, wow. That went very, 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 very white. That's all right, though. Even when we have an emergency, we don't panic, guys. We just, like, come back into it and go, all right, we can work with this. But, yeah, that does kind of look iridescent, doesn't it? Because you're... Essentially, whenever you put two spectrum colors next to each other that don't necessarily belong to each other, you can get a little bit of an iridescence, especially with greens, blues, and purples. It can be fun that way. Just doing a little bit of blending in here, just messing it up, waiting for more questions. You guys have been very questionful this time. That makes me happy. I like to answer questions for you. But yeah, so yeah, bottom line, if you're in Florida, visit the Dali Museum. The big ones especially, you can't even get how awesome his style is and how much of an artist he was until you see those up close. Prints and photographs do not capture the subtlety of his work. Oh my gosh, was he good. Just the form with no sculpted... Huh.
Great idea from Painting Dog, but knowing Ed and his desire, I will doubt you'll see anything that doesn't have texture on it because he is a dry brushing master and likes to make sure we can always dry brush.
Yeah, I doubt you'd see it from Reaper. It would be something that almost somebody would have to do for fun and play with it. Let's see. What am I looking forward to for Bones 5? Evil Elvis, the dragons are so good. Oh my gosh, the dragons are so good. Shotakami. I think they all look, I mean, come on, like, you know, let's face it. All of us have moments where our stuff looks like finger painting from 3-year-olds. Like,
absolutely. Just about everything Justin and I paint looks like, yeah.
Well, and even this, it's like, you know, again, I would come in and say outline. It really looks messy to me, but that's when you come in and you outline it. You put in your little lining, you get your scales going on, you know, so look, see? Then the scales come out again. What are my favorites from 4? I really like Baba Yaga's hut, though I haven't painted one yet, but I like the style of it. And I love painting a terrain, and it's close enough to a terrain piece that I would really love to, like, you know, paint it. Let me think. I'm trying to remember what else I really love. Was Maldrakar 4? Because I love Maldrakar. The problem here with being at Reaper is that it all rolls together, right? Especially not being staff painter anymore. It's hard for me to remember what got released with what. So see, I went in and traced around, essentially I lined around the scales, and that makes them stand out a little bit better. So that's a different way to do this. Here I just dabbed highlights on each scale. Here I painted the entire thing in a block, and then I re-added the scale shadows. So you can see how that gives you a different effect, but I'm using the same colors. Mal was 3. Thanks, guys. I'm trying to think. Oh, I really like the Wyvern, Black Sting. I think he's really good. I like him a lot. I really want to paint one of him.
I'm a huge fan of the Dance of Death.
Yes, and of course this. Obviously, part of the reason I picked Dance of Death is that I love this model. So much as I curse about it taking forever to paint, I still am enjoying it. And that's really the test, right? It's like if you can spend a lot of time on something and still like it, that's why I'm real picky about models I choose for like competition, where I know that I'm going to be spending a lot of time with them. You always want to pick something that you're really excited about, that you think, well, if I had to spend, 3 months with this, would I still be excited about it? And if the answer is, then don't do it. But if the answer is, yeah, I think I would, I really like it. Always try to pick stuff that really lights your fire when you're going to put a really good paint job on it. It helps you get through. I'm just highlighting.
Jerry, that's a good question.
That's what we got.
It's a great question. It's how big will the Titan be for Bones 5? If I have anything to say about it, Jerry, which in case you're curious, I don't. It'll be as big as I can get them to make it.
As big as he can convince Ed or nag Ed into doing. Dragonite, color theory is your weakness, and how do I pick colors? I honestly tend to pick colors I think are pretty. With things like this, where I wanted a black dragon, but I didn't want it to be black with the highlights. The way that I approached it was that I want it to be kind of swampy, because black dragons are supposed to be swampy, so swamp green was a natural pick. And then I was like, well, what goes with green? And then if in color theory, if you look at, there are 2 different triads. There's red, yellow, blue, which is the primary, and green, orange, purple, which is the secondary. And you don't have to use all 3, you can just pick 2. So I went with green and purple. And I didn't want to use a purple that was really bright. I wanted something that was still a little bit muted. So I started with Styx purple, and then runic purple is a really good highlight for that. So that's how I chose these colors. And as long as I keep the majority of the dragon dark, he should still look like a black dragon. Let's see here. Just making sure I'm not missing anybody. Titan train. A warehouse kit, right. It'll be that big. It's not a garage kit anymore. It'll be a warehouse kit. 1-to-1 scale. Please, no, we'll never put it on mold. Hello, Cleo. Oh, yeah, Paint Rack is a good app, I've heard. But yeah, I mean, with basic color theory, what I tell people on my Patreon, I've done a few things about choosing colors on there, is contrast is your baby. That's what you want. So if you've got a dark, figure out what color you're starting with. One color. Just pick one color. It doesn't matter what color you want to choose. Just grab one color. And once you have that, work everything else from it. If the color you chose is dark, then the color that you choose to go with it should be light. If it's light, then the color you choose to go with it should be dark. You look for contrast. Don't use colors that are right together on the color wheel unless one is really light and one is really dark. For example, a lot of people like to use blues and greens when painting mermaids, but if you use a medium blue and a medium green, it looks kind of especially if you throw a teal in there. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by chat. Green users! Hey, I knew who that is. Hi, Julie. I wondered if you'd show up. The sculptor of this awesome dragon is in our chat, guys. I need more swamp green also. I'm going to get more swamp green. What time is it, Collins?
It is currently 2:43 according to Justin's computer. If that's
all right.
working,
So we have about 20 minutes left, or 15. So we're getting down to the end here. I better do some quick highlighting on this dragon, or I won't get nearly as far.
10 or 15 more minutes, and then we'll do the giveaways and then wrap up for the day.
Yeah. Sounds good. Oh yeah, remember your giveaways. We're giving away Reaper Kolinsky Sable brushes, the 05 size, which is the size I consider most useful and the brush that I pretty much used through my entire Reaper staff painter career.
Also, as a shout out, it's still September, so folks that want to do their subs, this is a great time. They're basically half price, so get on in
Yeah,
there.
so if you have an Amazon Prime account, you get a free Twitch sub. Remember. Reaper Reaper has had Reaper branded brushes for a while. We don't make them in-house, but we had the Taklons for a very long time, and now we have Kolinskis. Yay! I'm just highlighting his little foot. I went too green with it now, so I need to go purple, so I probably need to throw some white. Unsolid Oceans. I actually used Vallejo's metallics. They're a bit, my biggest problem with them is the consistency is a little bit plasticky with Vallejo paint, with all of the colors. I'm not as much a fan of it, but I really loved, their gunmetal blue actually is one color that I really adored. The dark blue metallic, I used to use it on vampires all the time. Because it looks fantastic when you put it with a red cape. But yeah, I mean, Vallejo's got some cool colors in their metallics line. I'm not up on the latest stuff because I stopped using them when I started making Master Series, for the most part. But yeah, I don't mind them. I think Vallejo stuff works pretty well mixed if you shade it by mixing in regular paint colors. I think their metallics work pretty well that way. And then they do have a nice selection of metallics. I think that the Vallejo airbrush line metallics are actually a little more useful than the regular line metallics. I like the consistency, and you can get some really bright colors in there, like their chrome is really useful. All right. Hey guys, I got a lot of dragon highlighting done today. Look, there's so much dragon highlighting done. I'm gonna get his neck. We didn't quite get all of him. I do want to spend some time on his face. So, like, maybe next time, since a lot of you didn't get to see when I did his head on this side. So next time on stream, I'll do this side of his head for everybody who didn't get to watch the face. Where can you buy dragon? This dragon is for sale. If we have any in stock, it's for sale.
We won't have any in stock for very long.
Oh no, we
It
have
is,
them
in
on
fact,
order.
it is
So I'm
not.
painting the model that we are out of. Oh, I'm failing.
Several months away.
We
I'm
did
so
get rid
failing.
of some of the last from the Kickstarter a while back, but those went pretty fast, so we won't see these until they are box ready, which will be a little ways away.
Yeah. So Sigwolf, I'm debating white or silver on the other dragon. He could also go red. But I'm not sure I want to go red. All right. I'm just outlining some scales on Mr. Dragon. Yeah, Julie's winged cat. The one I painted to look like Mama-san.
Like details on dragon.
Yeah, people want me to do a metallic dragon. It's just ridiculous. You guys are so silly. Because you're so silly, you might get your wish. Because I respect silliness, because I am a silly person intrinsically. I'm just going to try to get some highlights on this dude. Get his purple, and then we'll get some green. And you can just see I'm throwing the paint on here. Just don't worry about it. Just get the paint down. Down with the paint. Yay, kind of your destiny. Kind of pretty. Let's get his neck scales going on here.
So, while you're doing that, I have a question as
Sure.
my own painting question. When your brush starts to kind of fray out a little bit, what do you do about those stray hairs?
Well, if it's like it is now, like I've got some fraying going on, see it, guys? That's just because it's drying out a little bit. So that just needs to be re-wetted. So the real question is, once you wet your brush, does it hold a really good point? See, mine does. That means there's no intrinsic problem with the structure of the brush. And if I notice that I get a little bit of hair fraying as it gets dry, what I might want to do is put a little bit of hair conditioner in it when I'm done with it and point it. Just make it into a nice point and let it sit. And if you do that every time that you use your brush at the end of your use, you can train a brush to hold a shape better. You're also moisturizing it, right? This is natural hair, and we're dipping it in water constantly, so it is going to dry out. Now, if you get your brush wet and you still have a hair problem, then I usually will take an X-Acto knife and do surgery. So let's just show you guys. So make sure you've got a pretty sharp X-Acto, and you want to kind of look and isolate the hair. Usually it's standing out. I've got one right here. And so you slide the brush right under that hair that's sticking out. And it does help if you wet your brush so you can, the rest of the brush holds together and doesn't get in your way. Slide the hair under your brush, follow the line of the brush all the way down to the ferrule, keeping that hair on top of it. And then flatten it, get it right against the ferrule. Like you can see my knife is right hitting the top of that metal part. And you want to squeeze it there and nick it off. You never want to pull out a hair. That is going to intrinsically mess with the shape of your brush and you may ruin it. But doing a little bit of surgery like that, a hair or two, with a sharp X-Acto, just following it all the way down and nipping it off is an acceptable form of brush surgery. And it does not actually hurt your brush because all of the hairs that hold your brush together are still nicely, tightly packed inside the ferrule and you haven't messed with that. If you try to pull a hair out, you are going to mess with that. So that would be, oh, copper dragon could be cool. Oh, copper could be cool, Polith. That's a really good, oh, that's a really good idea. We have that cool NMM copper triad. You think so, Seanald. You think so. But I bet I could speed paint an NMM dragon. I'm almost doing it with this one. This one is pretty fast. I don't know. I'll think about it. I'll consider it. I'll take it under advisement. All right. I think we're pretty much to the point where we have to give away some brushes,
just
right,
a few more minutes here, so if we can get those last few people to put in their hashtag freeze.
Yep, hashtag free, and if you have any last minute questions, you should spout them at me now. Otherwise, you'll have to wait till next week, where it's just me and Collins holding the fort, as Justin abandons us, temporarily.
Yeah, he's going to do something like leave and go on vacation.
Yeah, he takes way too many vacations.
Agreed, he definitely does. One every couple of years is ridiculous.
I know. Seriously. Copper, I'm going to take that copper under advisement. That sounds like more fun than anything I had thought of up to this point. So thank you for that idea, Polith. And you're right, territorial battle. And it even fits with the scenery since we've got that kind of rugged rock. I really should put a swamp down around the base of that. Do we have a base that's like a CD size?
The short answer is
base?
yes.
Yes.
We have to go look at the old boss bases or base
yeah, I was going to
bosses
say,
or
base
cool name we have
boss.
for that.
I mean,
Yeah.
we aren't really base boss unless we have a base that's every size, and CD size is definitely a thing. Like anybody even knows what a CD is anymore.
It's one of those things you invest in, right?
only if you don't want to play the stock market, which these days, is viable. Let's see here. I could do a non-metallic tutorial along the way. What's vacations, Precious? Yeah, I'm with you. All right, we got all our hashtag freeze. Do we? I'm going to have to work on this guy's neck a little bit more. He didn't come together quite right there. I want that. Yeah, it's a little bit better. I'm still going to have to work on that. He's not coming together there like I want him to. I have to study this angle a little bit more. Sometimes things do not work much as you want them to, and you have to kind of stop and figure out why they do not work. And then you fix them. And you try not to do them again. What are we doing? Whee! All right. Yeah, well, we got most of the dragon, guys. We did. And we didn't get the tail, but the dragon is definitely, has highlights on various sides of him, and I actually like the side we did super fast today. I think that turned out really well. Highlighting it, Twistedoma, painting it regularly and then highlighting it with metallics. You can do that. I've did one, I think it was Cinder, the version of Cinder that I did for Reaper's box art that I did that. I did it in red and then I used metallic red to edge the scales. I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of it. If I'm going to do a metallic dragon, I'd rather just paint it as if it's metallic. Yes, I remember floppy disks, Jerry. Yes, I do. Oh my gosh. Yeah, 8-inch. No, that was before my time. 5 1/4. All right.
Well, Miss Ann, if you are ready, we can
I'm
have some
ready.
names over here to give away, and then
Yeah.
we can wrap up and bid farewell till tomorrow or next week, depending on when people want to join
Yeah,
us.
remember, if you want to see Ed and Ron talk to you about awesome, exciting things that are coming up, probably Bones 5 type things.
Maybe lots of Bones 5 type things.
Oh, then you should get on tomorrow night, U.S. time, and watch Reaper Live. And if you miss it, it's not a big deal. You can go and watch them kibitz at each other after the fact on YouTube.
Absolutely.
You just can't make fun of them live while they do their kibitzing.
Which is the real good part of it.
It is the real good part. I mean, really.
And just as a
All right.
reminder, if you guys win, you're going to send your name, the handle in which that you won by, and your address to reaperlive at reapermini.com.
Indeedy. Drum roll. Thank you, Shanauld. Man, my allergies are definitely acting up today. Crazy talk.
All right, I'm just going to read the names off here real quick, Ann, and then I'll post the announcements in the chat as well afterwards. So
Awesome. Thanks, Green users. Thanks, Julie and Bob.
yeah, special shout out to our local and friendly artists that are tuning in, and those of us who've worked with us for a long time. We appreciate you
Yes,
being here.
yeah. Bob and Julie and Rhonda, thank you for tuning in.
I don't know who they think it is. It's jokes on them if they think it's Justin, because my voice sounds way better. All right. First winner is basicbacchus. Second winner will be Hollymonster. Third winner will be Trashorama. Fourth winner will be Max Powers 911.
Woo.
And our fifth and final winner for today is Gray 2 Table Studios.
Woohoo! Yeah, Collins has that smooth delivery, that's for sure.
So, folks, if you definitely want, again, reach out to Reaper Live at reaperminis.com or reapermini.com so that you can make sure you get your stuff. Don't forget your address, name, and shipping address and all that fun stuff.
And Dragon says, "Roar! Don't forget to tune in next week and watch my other side of my head get painted. Yay!" Because I only have one side teeth, and that's really hard to eat with, he says. Roar.